This is a fur sewing machine. It has a relatively small needle, and it's meant to do a whip stitch around the edges of fur. So it has a very tiny seam, and it allows you to sew the thin pieces of fabric, thin pieces of fur together, and turn them inside out. It's basically a chain stitch, and it's an overlock stitch at the same time. I'll show you how that works in a minute. So this company, Osan, Frederick Osan, also made a very early machine that was the very first featherweight. It wasn't really a featherweight. It's called a Sew Handy, and if you look it up on the internet, you'll find it was a very small portable machine. It is very popular in its day. Eventually, he went out of business, and I think Singer bought him this company in around 1930 or so. And of course, they copied the machine. I don't know when they came out with their version of it or if it was patented, but this machine is a 176, model 176, and it's pretty much identical. In fact, it uses the same needles. It really does look almost the same. I haven't gotten it running, and I'm not too concerned about it. So this machine here is a newer version, probably, I'm going to guess 1950s, maybe even 1960s. It's called a Plush Master, and it was made by R. Olio and Sons. And I've never used it, but it came to me fully functional, and you can see it's got oil cups and all kinds of places on it to keep it oiled. It also has a stand underneath with that a cup would sit underneath all of that under your table, so that it would collect all the oil, and you would lift this up if you needed to oil it. It uses a slightly longer needle, which is a big selling point because these needles are real. The needles on this machine are very, very tiny. Okay, there you have it. Okay, so let's see if I can show you the needle first. This is the needle that's used in this machine. You can still buy these needles. Let's see if I can show you how long it is. Pretty short. So I don't actually have any fur to sew, but it uses. But I have this folded up piece of fabric here. I'm going to show you how it works. It's got a very narrow seam on it, which is required because if you're sewing something with fur. You probably have small pieces of fur you're trying to put together and mix and match. This arm comes out via a chain that goes through the machine, and it lets you put your fur or your cloth or whatever you're sewing in there, and then it goes back, and it's got a really heavy spring inside. So I'm going to turn it by hand because it's really meant to be turned with a motor, and I don't have as good a control over the treadle as I would like. So if you watch here, you'll see this thing work. So this little thing on the top is really like the hook, and it goes down and snatches the thread off the needle, brings it around under, and then lets go of it, goes around and gets the next one. I will try to sew this with the treadle and see if I can do that without too much trouble here. Okay, so I'm going to try to treadle this. It may take a couple shots to get it going here. Alright, there we go. You got to keep the seam very small or you'll lose stitches. Pretty cool though. And there's I think I lost a stitch. You can control the stitch length. Certainly that's a really wide stitch right there. There you go. And that's an Osan fur machine, and you can still get these machines used off of eBay, and they're used a lot overseas. I assume they're probably not used too much in the United States since we have this issue with sewing fur. But you can still buy these machines refurbished. The company eventually became, well, another company called Bonus. These people still make parts, and they also sell refurbished machines. There you go. Excuse me. So we have here a Osan fur machine made in the probably early 1930s or 20s. I'm going to start this over again so we can see it from the beginning. Lifting it out, moving the fabric out. Now that is a chain stitch, so it's going to come unraveled here. I'm going to shut this for a second. Okay, so I'm sewing a piece of fabric because I don't have any fur. And you can't really do edging of fabric because it requires a nice clean edge without pieces of thread popping up and getting in the way of the stitching. So I'm just like abusing this piece of fabric here. I'm going to put it back in there and get it started. And you'll see this is just as pretending to be fur. Has a nice edge, doesn't have pieces of thread that are going to pop up and screw with it. It's a sensitive machine. It has to have a very small seam or it can miss stitches and so forth and so on. I'm going to turn it by hand so you can see how it works. So it's doing an overlocking stitch. It's doing a chain stitch with an overlock. See it by hand? That's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to try to operate it with this treadle. This is not my forte. Here goes. You have to keep the seam relatively in the right spot or you'll miss stitches. Now this machine normally operates at like 3,000 revolutions per minute. That's not bad. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. This is connected to a chain underneath and a spring, and I've got a little knee pad or a knee lever down here that's I'm pressing against right now. I'm going to move the needle back. Okay, so now we have a chain stitch that can come unraveled, but I just wanted to give you a demo of how that works.